Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
And welcome back to FPL Graduates and welcome back to another video on FPL 22-23. We're still waiting for July, still waiting for the game to come out, but we're going to bring you the best from the newly promoted teams.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at all three teams and three assets from each of them and decide if there's any that you need to be getting in your Game Week 1 teams.
Okay, so we are starting off with Nottingham Forest. They were the team that came up by the playoffs in May. And yeah, we're going to look into this team first. As you can see up on here, we've got Ryan Yates as the first sort of pick from Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, so Ryan Yates hopefully should be coming in as a cheap midfielder to have on your bench. He played almost every minute for Nottingham Forest last season. He got some decent returns too, 8 goals, no assists. So you can maybe look for a return from him every now and then. But yeah, one of these cheap enablers to have on your bench is a good little option if he's playing most of the minutes.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning as well, as you can see on the screen, Nottingham Forest fixtures are quite tough, so it's definitely worth bearing that in mind when going to pick one of these players. Ryan Yates, though, for 4.5 million, which is what we expect him to be around, should be good value for money.
So up next is a new signing, a new loan signing as well. It's Dean Henderson. Obviously, he spent the last 2 years on the bench at United. So we've got the stats here from his last campaign in the Premier League with Sheffield United, where he was one of the best picks in FPL. I remember owning him myself throughout that season. So you can see, played most of the minutes, made a lot of saves during that time. And obviously, Sheffield United were quite a good defensive team in that season. And I think Nottingham Forest, out of all the newly promoted teams, are probably the side that can maybe replicate that. Obviously, got a good system there. What's your thoughts on Henderson this season, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, like Steve Cooper, the Forest manager, he's a really good manager, and he turned them around. And I think bringing Henderson in is a fantastic signing. Probably one of the best signings that any of the promoted teams have made. We know defensively, teams that come up, they can concede a few chances here and there. But Henderson's a good shot stopper as well. So it's worth bearing that in mind. And I think for, again, 4.5 million, you really can't go wrong with Dean Henderson. And it could be a case where we're seeing a few of the 4.5s from last season bumped up in price. We tend to see that a lot of keepers. So you may be looking with not much budget left for a cheap alternative, especially with the amount of premiums that there are. Dean Henderson could be that guy to go for this season with the same points he could potentially get. Okay, and last but by no means least, we're going for Brennan Johnson. Yeah, like last season, he was the main man at Forest. He was their player of the season. He got into the team of the season in the championship as well. I mean, he started every game and or at least played a part in every single game over the season. And he could very well be placed as a midfielder on FPL, but we're anticipating 6.5 million striker. I think it's a good cheap option. If you're going to go with someone like Haaland up front and need a cheaper option, Brennan Johnson could very well be the guy to go for.
Yeah, some decent stats to back up as well. 18 goals and 10 assists last season. It's no mean feat in the Championship. Obviously, Nottingham Forest to bolster their attack as well. Their new signing of that striker from the Bundesliga. So he's going to have some support up there too, which is great. I don't think his minutes will get affected too much. It'll be interesting to see how Forest line up with him in the team as well. So a good little option if you're looking, like Ben said, for that little cheap enabler striker next to the likes of Haaland. So moving on next, we're going to Bournemouth, the team that finished second in the Championship next season. They've got a very, very tough run, probably the toughest run out of all the newly promoted teams, with that Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool triple back-to-back in game week 2 to 4. But they will have some spells in the season where you might want to look at these assets. So we're going with JAIDON ANTONEE first of all. He was almost partnering up with SOLANKE on the wing last season in the Championship. Got some decent goal scoring out of it, 8 goals, 7 assists. But we think that he should be priced at a really low level, similar to almost Yates, probably not 4.5, but you may be looking at 5 to 5.5 million. So he could potentially be an enabler for you, again, like we said with the previous player.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a very good option. If I was going to avoid any team of the promoted teams at the start of the season, it probably would be Bournemouth. It'd be interesting to see, how they line up as well, because they've got a big squad. They brought in a lot of players in January, so it'd be interesting to see, and it might even benefit FPL managers sort of not going for them for the first sort of 5 game weeks or so, just to work out how Scott Parker's going to line up this Bournemouth team. Okay, so up next we've got another midfielder who we think's probably going to be around the £4.5 million mark. It's Philip Billing. We had him at some people had him at some points when he was last in the Premier League. I don't think he's going to get too many goals and assists. Yes, he got 10 of each last season in the Championship, but we may see him sort of playing a box-to-box midfield role. We'll have to wait and see with Billing. I like him as a 4.5 million option. Josh, what are your thoughts on Billing?
Yeah, I think personally we might get priced out of using Billing this season. I think we could maybe see him be 5.5 million, which is just not something that we really want. Obviously, he is a renowned starter who'll probably be playing most minutes for Bournemouth. But like you said, if he's not really going to be the guy who's going to get returns a lot, obviously playing box to box. So I don't know if he'll be the mainstay, but if he is priced at 4.5 and we do get a bit lucky, he's definitely going to be one of the standout options in that category. So next up, and the last player for Bournemouth is obviously going to be Dominic Solanke. He had a great season last season, and without Mitrovic in the league, he probably would have been more known and probably more of an asset that people want to have in their teams this season. In 46 starts, he's managed to get himself 29 goals and 7 assists, so a very good goal scoring record. What's your thoughts on Solanke, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, as we've seen with Brennan Johnson, he was outperforming his XG just a little bit, and that XG always catches up with players unless they're world class. And Solanke, as you can see by his expected goal stats, his output is just as what you'd expect. 29 goals from an XG of 33.72. That's really good to see. It just shows he's prolific, but also isn't wasteful in front of goal. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on Dominic Solanke. Again, it's a case with the Bournemouth guys. Let's just wait a couple of weeks and see how they line up. But Solanke will be that main guy up top for Bournemouth next season. Okay, so we're moving on into Fulham, and the first guy that we've got is Antonee Robinson. As you can see, again, with most of these picks, these are players that have played a large majority of the season. And yeah, he looks like a decent asset. I don't know about you, Josh, 4.5 again, maybe?
Yeah, it's got to be. I think it's got to be that sort of price for you to consider him in your team. Anything more than that, then you probably look to other more established Premier League defences to go get players from, like Wolves, for example, that we're looking at definitely at the start of this season. His output going forward, not the best, but I think there will definitely be points that maybe throughout this season that Fulham have a good run of fixtures where you might look to one of their defensive assets, and I probably think Antonee Robinson is the best out of their defence in terms of going forward. So up next is Harry Wilson. He had a great season last season, getting 10 goals and 19 assists. But as you can see, very much outperformed his expected data. I wouldn't expect him to be necessarily getting to those heights again this season. I think maybe priced at around 5.5 million would be a reasonable price and would actually have a lot of people looking at him maybe to start this season.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen on numerous occasions how good Harry Wilson has been. He's been one of the star performers for Fulham for sure, and helping other assets get returns as well. But we have to also remember Fulham scored loads of goals last season. They were the top scorers in the league. They must have scored about 30 goals against Reading on their own. So going forward, they're a lot better than they were in previous seasons, and they create a lot more chances. So it's worth bearing that in mind for a certain asset that we haven't talked about yet. He'll get more service because of players like Harry Wilson. Okay, so that player is, of course, Aleksandar Mitrovic. Wow, what a season he had last year. 43 goals, off an expected goal of 34. So he was outperforming it a little bit, but he was getting given a lot of chances. And to even have 34 expected goals, that is a phenomenal rate. Just shows that he's been very, very clinical. He's the main man up front for Fulham, and we expect that again this season. We saw when they were last in the Premier League that he sort of came in and out in spells. I don't think that's going to be the case this time round. He's proved himself time and time again in the Championship. More than deserves his chance for a full season as Fulham's number 9.
Yeah, an interesting caveat to these Fulham attackers is that they're going to be without Fabio Carvalho. Obviously, he went and joined Liverpool, and he was one of their main attacking threats too, almost like the third man of this trio. So it'll be interesting to see, one, if they replace him, and two, how that affects the output with Mitrovic and Harry Wilson. But a good thing is that the fixtures at the start aren't necessarily the best. Obviously, Liverpool on the opening day, 2 fairly decent fixtures, and then it gets a little bit tricky again. So it gives you that time to watch these newly promoted assets and see how they embed themselves into the Premier League.
Okay, so that is the run through of all the individual players that we're covering for this video. What we do want to say with these players that you're looking to bring in, unless they're going to be 4.5 million bench fodder, we would probably wait and see with some of these assets. The fixture run for all three teams is some of the hardest in the league to start the season off. So it's good that we get to sort of get that chance to have a look and judge these players based on the difficult games. Josh, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, like you said, other than the bench fodder likes of maybe Yates, and if Billing is priced at that low price, I think I probably would stay clear, even of the likes of Mitrovic after his fantastic season, just to see how they get on and how there's a lot of uncertainty for different reasons in each team. So I think, yeah, if you wait and see, there's definitely going to be other options at that price, and it might be a case Mitrovic starts banging them in straight away, and then you can easily switch and make your team flexible enough to go to a different player.
Yeah, all of these players are sort of priced at quite, or will be priced at relatively cheaply. So they're not going to be difficult assets to be able to get into your team once the season starts. We anticipate that the most expensive that a promoted team player could get is 6.5 or 7 million. So it really isn't too difficult to be able to get these sorts of players in your team.
So that wraps up the end of the video. It's been a good one. We hope you've enjoyed it. If there's any promoted players that you're looking at that we didn't cover in this video, make sure you comment them down below.
Yeah, and if you like the video, make sure to give it a big old thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you want to check us out on our other socials, we have left them in the description. And as usual, I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later.